Hello YouTube, I'm Jack Clark, the Musketeer, coming to you with another video. How are you? Of course, as you can tell in the background, there is a girl, and I don't know quite what to do, because...
Hey Jack.
she's talking to me, guys. I don't, as a person who plays Yu-Gi-Oh! Almost exclusively, I don't know what to do with female interactions. Anyway, this is Jasmine, she's lovely,
Hey.
and I like her lots and lots. Anyway, she's just going to be in the background looking lovely, aren't you? What she said. Anyway, of course, as you can tell from the title of today's video, I'm going to be doing a deck profile for you people. However, of course, this deck profile has meaning behind it, because I've always wanted to do a deck profile on Vylons, because they're like my favourite archetype, like, ever. And actually, people need to shut up about Dragon Rulers, because Dragon Rulers, of course, are a very, very, very good deck, and they're kind of ridiculous, and I don't know what Konami were thinking in the creation of this bloody deck. But this deck, however, has not lost to Dragon Rulers at all. So this deck has not lost against Dragon Rulers once, and I will give you a very brief explanation as to why that is, and that is Vylon Epsilon plus Vylon Segment equals butthurt. Anyway, before I get onto why this means that Dragon Ruler players will infinitely hate you, let's go through the actual deck itself. We've got 2 copies of Gen X Neutron, 1 copy of Honest, 3 copies of Photon Thrasher, 2 copies of Shining Angel, 2 copies of Summon Monk, 3 copies of Vylon Cube, 3 copies of Vylon Prism. For the spell lineup, we have Dark Hole, Heavy Storm, Instant Fusion ×2, we have 1 copy of Mind Control, Monster Reborn, 2 copies of Mystical Space Typhoon, Reinforcement of the Army, Vylon Filament, 3 copies of Vylon Material, 1 Vylon Matter, and 3 Vylon Segment. For our traps, we have 2 copies of Call of the Haunted, 2 Fiendish Chains, Solemn Judgment, and 2 Threatening Roar. For the extra deck, of course, we have our Instant Fusion targets with Darkfire Dragon and Musician King. We have Synchros, Ancient Sacred Wyvern, Black Rose. We have Scrap Dragon, Stardust Dragon, Vylon Alpha, Delta, 2 copies of Epsilon and Sigma, and we have some Exeses with Gaga Cowboy, Maestroke, Papilloperative, such a weird word, and Starlight Paladinamo. So, of course, that's the deck list. But how this deck actually works is, of course, with our boss monster, Vylon Epsilon. Of course, the Vylons were one of the dual terminal archetypes that were, they came in the second wave of dual terminal archetypes, where actually the archetypes became a lot more self-dependent. They didn't really need much more outside cards to actually be good, like the first generation ones did with, like, Ice Barriers and X-Sabers, of course, with the latter getting support later on, making them a much more inclusive archetype. However, Vylons, out of, like, Lavos, we've got Gishki, we've got Gem Knights, all of these decks work very well on their own. But not Vylons. No, Vylons are shit. Well, mostly crap. Anyway, however, they do have some pretty good boss monsters. We have Vylon Epsilon, which, of course, equip cards that are equipped to him cannot be targeted by cards or effects. And once per turn, of course, you can send an equipped card that's equipped to him to the graveyard, and you can destroy a monster your opponent controls. So it's a Scrap Dragon to all intents and purposes, but it's for the archetype, so it's very, very good. A Fiend Scrap Dragon, lovely. But the effect that really makes this card stand out, of course, is the equipped cards equipped to this card cannot be targeted by cards or effects, because that, coupled with Vylon Segment, means that your opponent cannot target the Segment because of Epsilon, and you cannot target the Epsilon because of Segment. However, of course, you can target the Epsilon with spell card effects. So, of course, against Prophecies with, like, their Fate and all that stuff, you may have a little bit of a hard time, but against Dragon Rulers, your opponent can't do anything. Coupled along with our main ways of summoning Epsilon would be, of course, if you've got Prism in your hand, and you've got a Photon Thrasher in your hand, then of course you summon the Thrasher, summon the Prism, and immediately you have an Epsilon. And of course you would use the Prism's effect, pay 500 life points, and you could equip it to the Epsilon, giving it 1,000 extra attack points. So 3,800 attack points during damage calculation. That's kind of silly, and I've had so many people rage and say that, no, you can't do that. I'm like, yeah, read the card, numbnuts. But of course, Summon Monk is also our main way of summoning Vylon Prism from the deck, which allows us to make our Epsilon. Because, of course, they don't have any searching capabilities, literally pretty much at all. And with Summon Monk, you are able to get it straight from the deck. And, of course, people will be saying that Summon Monk is rubbish because, of course, you have to discard a spell card, and, of course, it can be stopped, and blah, 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 blah. But, however, the pros outweigh the cons, I think, honestly, because one Summon Monk into Prism, and you have an instant Epsilon with 3,800 attack points during damage calculation, and if you have an equip card, then you can equip the equip card to the Prism, then do the Synchro, and then of course the equip card will then search for another equip card, therefore thinning your deck and allowing you to get Vylon Matter off earlier, and of course allow you to directly search for a Vylon Segment if you don't have one already. So it's kind of silly. So this deck is lovely. And I'm going to give you my best kind of example of what this deck can do before I go, because it was spectacular. I, of course, was up against a Dragon's Ruler player. And, of course, his field consisted of, and I kid you not, 3 copies of Mecha Phantom Beast Dragosack and a Big Eye. And my field consisted of a Epsilon equipped with a Prism and a Segment, a very common occurrence in this deck. My opponent's whole army of monsters could do nothing. There was nothing in his deck that could stop it, because every card in the Dragon Ruler deck targets, and they're all monster effects. So if you can't target the equip card or the monster, and you can't get over the monster because it has 3,800 attack points, you do nothing. But what he did instead was he destroyed his entire field by using the Dragosack's effects to destroy themselves, including the Big Eye, minusing himself horrendously, and at which point summoning a Lucky Straight, trying to get the 7 effect, and failing because he sucks at this game. But yes. Anyway, I'm consciously aware that my girlfriend is looking at me with a condescending look on her face. So I think I'm going to leave it to that. I think she likes me, guys. I'm talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! And she hasn't bolted yet. Yes! Anyway, of course, this is my deck. Other little bits and bobs, like, of course, Neutron searches for cubes, which allows us to have access to our Vylon level 7 synchros, of course, being Delta and Sigma, which, of course, Delta allows you to search for more equip cards, and Sigma allows you to end games on its own. So this deck has a lot of options, mostly, of course, your synchros. Of course, other matchups other than Dragon Rulers may vary, and, of course, a side deck will be recommended, obviously. But, of course, that's pretty much it. I'm Jack Clark, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Musketeer. More videos coming out to you soon, but until then, goodbye. But do say so in the comments down below as a video response if you like this deck, what you change about this deck, what you think about this deck, and your personal quos, and what you think you would do with the Dragon Rulers deck. Because as much as the deck is silly, in this game, you are forced to adapt or jog on. So I'm going to do the first one, because that means I can play the game and enjoy it. So tell me what you're going to be doing about Dragon Rulers in the future, and do say so if you like the deck. But I'm going to go now because I've been rambling far too long. So yeah. Anyway. Bye!